Welcome everybody to another Indie Dev Spotlight video here on the Game Wisdom channel. This is going to be another coverage of the Steam Spring Festival of Games demo. All the games that we're playing were basically free for that demo, and we're always looking for new games to spotlight on our weekly Wednesday Indie Dev Spotlight streams. So if you're interested in submitting a game, please get in touch. But for our first game, we have Elden, Path of the Forgotten. This is a isometric pixel style game that is aiming to do, again, kind of the 2D Dark Souls kind of design. So we're in a mysterious world, things are trying to kill us, death refreshes things, and we have to manage our resources and weapon attacks. You can't see it in the bottom left hand corner because of my portrait, but we do have health and stamina to keep track of. You have a normal attack as well, kind of a heavier attack, and you're able to dodge around as well. And you'll also pick up some special abilities along the way, and apples are our healing item. Now, from playing the game, I don't know how much of this demo is considered feature complete. As in, is there going to be more progression to this game in the main version, or is this more of a proof of concept? And the reason why I say this is that I was having some issues with the overall design or the gameplay of Elden. The world itself didn't really seem to have a lot of shortcuts or things to explore. And I ran into some major issues, as you saw right there, with sometimes getting the hitbox of my weapon to connect to the hitbox of the enemies. When I would stab them, you would see the weapon hit the enemy, but it would not do anything in terms of registering a hit. Now, another point about this game that does prove to be troublesome is how dodging and avoiding attacks work. You can only dodge after you finish an attack. You cannot dodge cancel out of a move. What that means is that if enemies begin to surround or attack you in unison, you can't safely hit them before they can respond to you. And of course, that will lead to many deaths when you are surrounded by enemies, which this game loves to do the classic Dark Souls mistake of developers, and that is putting the player into arena fights when you have limited stamina and limited movement or fidelity of combat. And when you die, you return to the previous checkpoint. Another fault this game has is that it goes for the whole, we're not going to explain anything, and thereby we're going to be mysterious and cool. And the problem is that the game tries to leave this as an open world, but it didn't really seem to make sense to explore. Like, I went off the beaten path, or what I assumed to be the beaten path, several times, and it didn't seem like I was finding anything new. And most of the time, it felt like it was just better to run through enemies or around them than it is to fight, because the enemies themselves do not seem to drop any kind of resources or leveling material or even items that you can use. So they're essentially just there as an obstacle that's going to get in your way while you're trying to get to the good stuff or the actual progression. And because of that, I just walked away from this game just not, unfortunately, having any real sense of enjoyment from it. Again, Souls-like design is very hard to do right because of just how much fidelity and fine-tuning you need for combat. And if the combat and the progression aren't right in a Souls-like, it just ruins the entire game, in my opinion. But from here, we're going to move on to the puzzle game, Mystic Pillars. This is a title that is very much about trying to tell a story through its puzzle design, but I don't feel like the gameplay and the storytelling are meshing as well. Compare some of the other examples we've played, such as Filament, Manifold Garden, and so on. So, the rules for this one are pretty straightforward. Our job is to match the pillar numbers that you see in the middle with the book that you see, or the note page in the upper right, given the amount of moves that we have left. The rules are you can move gems from a pillar how many spaces as there are gems. So if you want to move a gem 4 spaces, or you want to move 4 gems, you can move them 3-4 spaces. But then if you only want to move 1 gem, that can only go 1 space. So the idea is that you are kind of splitting and reorganizing the stacks of gems in order to get them to the spots that they need to be. So what you're going to see right here is I'm going to be moving these around to try and separate them and then put them where we need them to be. And again, within the certain moveset. Now with a puzzle of this design, this is entirely hard-coded black and white puzzle, so there is no room for emergent behavior or alternate solutions. The story of the game, I believe this game has a heavy influence with, I think it was Indian mythology, and there's quite a lot of lore to what is going on in the game, and I really like it when we see games explore mythology from other cultures that we normally don't get. And there are cutscenes before and after each one of the game's major chapters as well. My problem, though, with this approach is that it doesn't feel like things are fully connected. And what that means is that what the story is telling me and what's going on in like this world map has absolutely nothing to do with the puzzles themselves. The puzzles simply exist on these individual screens. And this is one of those issues that we run into with a lot of puzzle games these days, especially ones that are trying to go back to the older way of designing them. One of the reasons why I like games like Filament, Manifold Garden, and other examples is that the puzzles and the world are integrated around them. Here, despite the path, you still have to complete all the puzzles in the chapter in order to move on to the next. Now, we played about 1.5 sections of Mystic Pillars on stream, and outside of just throwing more numbers at us, I really didn't see anything in terms of mechanical depth or growth. You know, changing how the rules of the pillars work, how the gems work, etc. And I don't know if that is going to be in the final version of the game or not. So if you're looking for something that is a bit different in terms of its storytelling, but still more or less a casual puzzle game for you to enjoy, I would say give this one a check. I believe the demo is still up now, but if you're hoping for more of an elevated puzzle game, then I don't know if this is going to do it for you. But we leave the world of puzzle solving for something very different. This is 100 Days, and this is a wine-making simulation combined with deck building or CCG elements and a touch of roguelike design. And yeah, that is definitely a mouthful of design elements for you. But the basic gameplay is that you play cards that you see along the bottom to perform specific tasks in your winery, such as setting up the growing of grapes, the aging in barrels, and so on and so forth. Each card creates a piece on the field, and then that piece on the field will last X amount of turns. By doing that, on the next turn, you'll be able to perform certain tasks or make certain decisions, such as raising the various aspects of raising or lowering the various qualities of the wine, what kind of bottles you want to make, what kind of place you want to sell the wine to, and so on and so forth. And your mission, of course, is to use your winemaking skills to produce the best quality wine to keep yourself in the green in terms of money and last as long as you can. Now, the demo that we played was on the limited side. Didn't let us get too far into things, but this is definitely, like, if you're looking for something unique from the independent space, 100 Wines, I think, takes the cake or the wine for you. Advanced elements that the game hinted at was the ability to upgrade cards or upgrade various pieces of gear, repair them, do more investments with kind of the organization of your place. And it's trying again to have all these like varying elements of simulation, winemaking, CCG, a little roguelike in terms of what events that can happen. It's really, again, a very crazy idea for a game. My main problem with this one, very similar to that game, I think it was Tarot, or we played another winemaking game a few years ago, is that I don't know how to make wine. Well, obviously, I'm not exactly going to be teaching a video on that. And the game is asking me to make choices and decisions about things that I have no idea what they're about. Is a sweet wine better than an acidic wine? Is there too much acid? I don't know what any of this stuff is, and the game will still review or rate the wine on these aspects. And I think the game will have to do a little bit better job of onboarding for the rest of us who don't own vineyards anytime soon. But as with some of our games that we play again on these spotlights, if you are looking for something that is entirely different from the games you normally play, then this is definitely one to keep an eye out on. But with that, we're going to do our quick Patreon supporter and sponsor shout out, and when we return, we got a few more indie games to look at for this video. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. We now move on to the roguelike Duster. For this one, this is kind of like taking the game Westerado from a few years ago and kind of focusing more on a roguelike aspect to it as opposed to the murder mystery. So our story is that we have a mission to head west. And standing in our way are all the dangers of the Wild West, including bandits, snakes, possible spirits, and of course running out of water and food. When you start the game, you'll create a character and choose various attributes that will affect how well they perform in terms of combat, shooting, finding resources, etc. And then the game will procedurally generate the map for you, kind of similar to the branching nodes of an FTL map. And your grand mission is to make it to the end. And you'll start the game with $100, and the starting town may have some random quests that you can do. Now, from what we were playing of this game, the main issue that I had was it didn't seem like there was a lot of variance in terms of how you play, nor did there appear to be any kind of persistence, unless that persistence only works after you manage to beat the game, or in the finished game. Again, this was another demo from the festival. The basic controls were alright. Again, the game plays kind of on the slower side, and enemies with guns certainly have their advantages against you, as they are able to quickly attack before you can really get a chance to respond or dodge. Likewise, sometimes the enemies melee-wise can kind of get in and get an attack before you have a chance to get them as well. But the game itself definitely has a good start to it. I will say that the fast dash ability that I just unlocked, I think that should be standard, because your basic movement is so slow in a game like this. And the maps appear to be procedural, although we didn't play it enough times to really get a good beat on that one. I always like Wild West or Western style games, again doing something a little bit differently, and this game has potential to it. But I would like to see more in terms of making the roguelike elements be a little bit more enjoyable, if people are going to stick around and play this for repeated playthroughs. But with that, let's move on to our final game for the Spotlight video. This is Evans Remains, and it's probably one of the biggest examples of a game that wants to have its cake and eat it too. This is a murder mystery driven puzzle platformer. And yeah, that's a lot of words there to describe a single game. So, the title is essentially split between its story, which involves this woman here on the search for a man named Evan, who developed portal and teleportation technology and has gone missing. It has led her to a strange set of islands where there could possibly be a treasure that could very well lead to eternal life. And the game itself, this is definitely an odd one in terms of its pacing, as essentially the story and the gameplay don't really intersect with each other. And what I mean by that is when you're doing these kinds of puzzle sections, there is no real mention or discussion at all about the story of the game. And then when you're doing the story, everything else about the gameplay just turns off. And I feel like that may come to hurt Evan's Remains, because this is a game that is trying to be two distinct things. It wants to be a puzzle platformer, it wants to be a visual or a story-driven game, where you're going to be spending, we were counting about good 5 to 6 minutes at one point just listening, or reading text, and doing nothing else. And that is not something that we see in a platformer. Platformers are all about, or action-driven games are all about that sense of flow and rhythm to the game. And Evan's Remains, at least in the version that we played during the demo, doesn't really have that. And again, the problem has to do with its pacing. Now, what you're watching on screen, this is just doing the puzzle solving. Because again, if I were just to show you the story, it would just be nothing but dialogue and watching characters emote to each other. There's no real gameplay there. And like I said, it's going to, I think, create a very specific audience. Because if you're playing an action-focused platformer, you don't want to stop to take an exposition. Likewise, if you are looking for a more engaging story, then you don't want to be interrupted with having to do action-focused gameplay. And you're going to have to be a fan of both, I feel, in order to get the full effect out of Evan's Remains. To give you a case in point, the cutscene that I just transitioned into this scene from, that lasted, without fast-forwarding through the dialogue, a good 6 minutes of gameplay. And that is, like I said, is not something we normally associate with platforming or platformer type design. And this is going to be one that I'm going to be curious what you folks think about this game, who have played the demo or who saw our coverage of it on the stream. Because, like we've said, usually when we talk about puzzle or story-focused platforming, it's more or less designed around kind of like being in the background. Something along the lines of Braid, The Swapper, etc., etc. And like I said, I think this is going to be an uphill battle for this game. Because if you don't like the story, you're going to be doing a lot of fast forwarding. And if you do like the story, then I hope you enjoy puzzle platforming. But with that said, we're going to wrap up this part of our Indie Dev Spotlight. We have more coming real soon to the channel. I'd like to thank the developers who submitted games, or in this case, who put their games up on the Steam Spring Festival. You'll find links to them in the description down below. But come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Have a great night, and I will see you next time with some more discussions on game design. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.